You talk about it in an informal way and in a lucid way about genetic algorithms. That is our topic today. And so, rest of the so genetic algorithms are basically algorithms in computer science. They're basically inspired from Darwinian evolution, right? And they fall under the umbrella of evolutionary computing. The idea was first conceived by John Holland, and he took the biological correlates and implemented them into computer algorithms. And then since then, they have become quite popular in computer scientific circles, and they're really powerful tools for problem solving. So I'm just going to talk about the biological inspiration about genetic algorithms, and over here I'll also be talking about some jargon which is normally used in, which is actually borrowed from the biological evolution and is used also in genetic algorithms. And it's not just the jargon is not just specific to biological evolution, but also to genetics as well. So the idea of genetic algorithms, as I said, is inspired from natural and evolutionary biological systems. In natural biological evolutionary systems, organisms are made of cells, and a cell is composed of a set of chromosomes. Chromosomes are found in the nucleus. Chromosomes are made of DNA, and sections of chromosomes are known as genes. DNA is short for deoxyribonucleic acid. It is a genetic code that contains all the information needed to build and maintain an organism. So what does this all mean? So, for instance, each organism, so the cell of each organism has a distinct number of chromosomes. For instance, in human beings, every cell contains 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs. Other organisms can have different number of chromosomes. For instance, cells in dogs can have 46 chromosomes. Chromosomes come in pair, but they are not always alike. They can be different in terms of such as pair of shoes can be different from each other. So they can have kind of differences. So chromosomes are composed of DNA, and consequently chromosomes are made of genes. A chromosome contains hundreds and thousands of genes. Trait is each gene encodes a particular protein, example, eye color or hair color, or for instance, height of a person, how much is that going to be, and stuff. Alleles, possible settings for a trait. So allele is the value that a particular trait is going to have. For instance, in terms of eye color, whether it's going to be brown, black, or blue, and so on and so forth. So, and we just left with a little bit of jargon. So each gene's own position in the chromosome is known as locus. Genome is the complete genetic material. A genotype is a particular set of genes in a genome. And phenotype is a genotype. So every genotype has translates into a physical structure, right? And that is known as the phenotype. So a genotype, physical and apparent characteristics for its color, height, intelligence, etc., that manifests itself in the behavior or appearance or physical properties of an organism. So that is the phenotype. So we are just left with a few more jargon terms over here, and one of them is crossover. So crossover is also known as recombination. So whenever two living organisms mate with each other, so they and in order to reproduce, crossover happens between their chromosomes. Right? So genes from parent recombine in a meaningful sense to form a whole new chromosome, and this leads to newer offspring, which is going to be different in terms of their parents because of the crossover, because of the way the crossover has happened, and they're also going to retain some similarities to their parents as well. So we are just going to explain that in a while. So, mutation is that whenever a certain portion of the genotype or the genome of an individual, whenever a certain portion of that, for instance, it could be one gene or a combination of genes, whenever it undergoes some kind of a perturbation, it could be due to natural phenomena, it could happen during reproduction, it could happen due to external factors affecting the, or it could happen during birth, as you know, the process of birth, or during the lifetime of an individual as well. So mutation, and it's something that basically changes the gene code of an individual, and that change carries on to the next individual. And that change is such that it does something significant, can be something significantly different in the phenotype of the organism. And that change carries itself over to the next generation. Can carry itself over to the next generation mutation. So, having said all of this, I have to move to this small topic of search spaces, which is connected with how we use genetic algorithms in computer science. But I'd also like to say that I'd also like to add something to it that is going to conclude, or in a more comprehensive way, about the biological inspiration behind creation of genetic algorithms. So Darwinian evolution as such follows a paradigm that is known as the survival of the fittest. So what that basically means is that a large number of organisms, that is what our planet is inhabited by, they, when they mate with each other, so they do so with the help of crossover and mutation. And what they basically do is that they change the genetic code of the offsprings. Now, some of the individuals that are produced in the process could have genetic code which manifests itself into phenotypes that can make them more befitting to survive in the environment. Whereas at the same time, some offsprings, because of these crossover and mutation, could be created that lead to a phenotypical, some phenotypical characteristics that do not make them fit for survival in the environment somehow, right? So those that are not fit to live in the environment are automatically by themselves extincted by the environment, whereas the ones that actually survive go on and reproduce and propagate their genetic code to the next generations. So to this end, the idea behind evolution is that it is quite an autonomous process that happens in our life systems all over around us. And this is basically the idea that we leverage from Darwinian evolution, and we use it to implement algorithms that are known as evolutionary computing algorithms or genetic algorithms that basically create newer solutions to problems by following this survival of the fittest paradigm. So survival of the fittest paradigm is at the heart of genetic algorithms. Having said this, I'd just like to talk about, I just said, use the word solutions. In the context of evolutionary algorithms, I'd just like to talk about search spaces. So, search space is like, in a Euclidean sense, it can be a space where all of our candidate solutions to a problem can lie. I'm saying this in right now in a mathematical sense, whereas this idea could be extended to more metaphorical or more prosaic senses as well. However, in a mathematical sense, so for instance, over here we have, let's say, the z-axis, which basically is a fitness axis, and over on here we have the x-axis and the y-axis, and these are basically axes corresponding to the solutions. So our solutions lie in this plane, in the xy plane, whereas the fitnesses of the solutions lie in the z plane, right? Depending on where a solution lies on the xy plane, it can have a different fitness. And if we traverse the whole fitness landscape of that, fitness landscape of that problem, we can have something that is that can be seen as a non-linear search space. And why? Because of the fact that the fitness of the solution is different at different points in x and y. So this is exactly why we have this non-linear. And this non-linear search space can be thought of as a mountain range with a lot of mountain hilltops as well as valleys, right? And our idea, our problem, and it is very natural. This is exactly how search spaces are in most engineering problems. They are just like that. And I've just plotted a Euclidean representation in 3D. However, in more higher dimensional problems, our search spaces would just be like that. We can just extend our thoughts to higher dimensions, and we still have to think in terms of 3 dimensions, because we cannot think beyond 3 dimensions anyway. We cannot visualize them. So in order to visualize any higher dimensional spaces, we'll have to rely on a 3-dimensional representation of that. So nonetheless, our solution space is just going to be, for most engineering problems, it can be nonlinear. And the problem with nonlinearity is that finding a solution in this search space, for instance, finding a solution, I could use a metaphor here that the solution is find a ball or find a point which is the lowest point in this search space, right? So if somebody has thrown a ball and we have to find it, so how are we going to find it, right? In the search space. The idea is, so the solution naturally is that we have to develop the ability to traverse the search space first. Because of the fact that if we cannot traverse the search space, then we cannot find our solution, which is maybe as I said, the small ball that we have lost somewhere in one of the valleys, right? So we have to be able to traverse that. Now, traversing this search space, which has too many highs and lows, is non-trivial. One of the ways we can think about traversing is that let's say we had a bunch of kangaroos, that we throw on the search space through helicopters. We have the parachutes, we throw them on this. And the kangaroos are trained to always go downhill, and they are also trained that whenever they find that green ball that we are searching for, they find it, and whoever finds it, he rings a bell, right? So searching the search space is kind of like that. It just helps. This metaphor, I think, just helps to think about the problem of searching a search space, right? Searching through a search space. So it's non-trivial. However, why it is non-trivial? Because if we really are not sure as to how to traverse the search space and reach the lowest point, maybe, And this is exactly why, for instance, traditionally mathematical algorithms based on purely, calculus and purely numerical methods, they have been used to search the search space, but they have their limits, because of the fact that in those algorithms, we just use a starting point, which is a point, let's say, where our helicopter threw the kangaroo, and then we start with a candidate solution over here, and then the algorithm knows how to run that solution downwards to a lower point. And that is exactly similar to the kangaroo knowing how to go downhill. However, the problem is that our helicopter in the numerical algorithm does not know where exactly to land the kangaroo, so that is going to hit the bottom point. And I'd just like to say over here that the kangaroo really does not know how to go up. It just only knows how to go down, right? You know, because it doesn't have the fuel or the proteins to go uphill, right? So that is the problem. So this is exactly here where algorithms such as genetic algorithms, which also belong to the family of meta-heuristic algorithms, they become extremely useful because of the fact that in a genetic algorithm, with the help of the nature of the algorithm, with the help of its genetic operators that are actually crossover and mutation and others, right? We actually make it a stochastic problem, and then we don't actually initialize one solution, we initialize a whole population of solutions in this search space, right? And it is just like throwing not one kangaroo in the search space, but a whole bunch of kangaroos and scattering them all along the search space, right? And asking them, each one of them, to find the solution, right? And so each of the kangaroos is a different kangaroo, or maybe it could be more animals actually, a donkey as well, or, you know, a zebra, or, you know, whoever, a dog, you know? Really good at finding balls, you know? You know, guys, I don't think it's a bad presentation. How to crawl this car. You know.
Sorry, I'll not.
Go on.
Yeah. So,
Right.
yeah. So we initialize all those different kangaroos that are not alike, that are different in terms of their searching habits. All they don't know is that how not to go uphill. But even in the case of genetic algorithms, sometimes they can go uphill as well. You know, their children could go uphill as well. So they're different in terms of their likes and dislikes and this and that. Every kangaroo is different from each other, right? And we create a population of kangaroos or solutions, and then we use our genetic operators to create a new generation, which is going to be different from the parent generation. So in that generation, all the new individuals, which are, let's say, kangaroos, who are better at going down or who are lower than their parents, are chosen as the fitter kangaroos, and who have actually gone up. We just kind of like litter them away, you know, because they're not fit for the environment, because the environment demands us to be able to go down there, right? You know, because we are searching a ball. So we just, so this is how basically. So I think it's a very good idea to connect the debate about, you know, to talk about search spaces, because search spaces, the intricacy, you know, this nonlinear, highly nonlinear intricacy of the search space basically, you know, highlights the problem that why we need such a sophisticated algorithm. You know, because of the fact that in most engineering applications, most of the times, our search space is going to be highly nonlinear. And it's just not going to be a three-dimensional search space, it is just going to be a really high-dimensional search space. And this is exactly why we need sophisticated algorithms to solve these kind of problems. Is it? Ausflux. Okay. Yeah. Get your dance, you know? That means, should I finish? You know?
Talk more about the kangaroos.
Should I talk about? Yeah. So I have kind of like talked about all of this stuff, and Prince wants me to slide through these presentations. This presentation. I think this is good to go.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh yeah, I love it. You know. So this is you know, whatever I've been talking about. So this is kind of like a good pictorial representation of, you know, because Prince likes to have, you know, because this is one of the first things I showed Prince when I came to the BDS room. Hey Prince, I'm a postdoc, and I made this slide, you know, you know, this is really good. Like, you know, this is from my dad when I was a PhD student actually. So what we do is that we start off with an initial population. And this initial population, instead of being made of kangaroos, is all made of Dalmatians, you know what I'm saying? But they're all different, and they're numbered, you know, just like prisoners in the prison, you know. So they're numbered, and they're all different, you know, in terms of, and we select 2 at a time, let's say, from the pool, and bring them to the mating pool, and then we have them, you know, mate with each other, recombine, you know, through cross-border mutation to create a newer, to 2 offsprings, and this is how the cycle goes on. We create a whole lot of a new population and see how fit or good or bad they are. Good ones are kept, bad ones are thrown away, and we move on in our, we have completed one generation of the evolutionary algorithm. So typically genetic algorithms, I was talking about, I was talking about some kind of jargon terms and stuff, right? So typically, genetic algorithms, one of the main things in genetic algorithms is that how the solution is represented to any problem, right? Well, the thing is that really depends on problem to problem, that can vary, but solutions in the primordial genetic algorithm, they were represented, encoded in bit strings, right? In bit strings, and every bit was an allele. Every bit was synonymous to a gene, and its allele could be 0 or 1, right? So that was and then afterwards came a new generation of genetic algorithms in which the solution was encoded in an integer array and then eventually into a floating point array as well. So we have these kind of like, what kind of problems they are used to solve? For instance, they could be used to develop controllers for, let's say, autonomous vehicles, in which so I'm just trying to tell you about, because I think it's very important to know how does genetic algorithm fit in? So for instance, in an autonomous vehicle, if you have a controller, let's say like for the steering wheel, and that's a piece of software, what is that going to be? Normally it's going to be a mathematical model, right? So mathematical model, what is a mathematical model? A mathematical model is a model that is composed of a bunch of mathematical functions, right? So it's a computer program. Any computer program. Why is it called a program? Because of the fact that it has some functionality, and the functionality comes from the combinations or the function calls or different functions of a program calls. So how to find that program? Well, genetic, that is a separate story. Maybe most of the times, traditionally it is handcrafted. You hire a mathematician or you have your own gut feeling, whatever, you do that. And then the second thing is, what are the inputs? So inputs to that steering controller are going to be, let's say, value from maybe the engine RPM or something like that, whatever, or the sensor data coming in, from the camera and this and that, right? And as well as so these are, sensor values are some kind of variables that program takes in, and then there are certain coefficients to any program, and they are basically constant values, and why they are, because so if let's say a controller is taking in a bunch of values, from the as input sensor values. So let's say it's taking 20 inputs, to kind of like produce value for the steering intensity. You know what I'm saying? So they are all the variables that are coming in as a period of, as a function of time, as time passes, so they're coming in. But each of those variables is not as important. And how do we know about the importance of those variables? Honestly speaking, normally we don't have a clue. And this is exactly where genetic algorithms or algorithms like that fit in. So they actually are used to tune the values of the coefficients of that controller. So this is, so we don't have a clue what the values of the coefficients could be, but let's say we know it for sure that if we find the ideal set of values for a combination of values for the coefficients, the controller is going to work really well. So how do we find that? This is exactly, so we have a solution space now, you know. So X is the coefficient, Y is the coefficient. I have to go back to the solution space, part. But the X is the coefficient, Y is the, and then we have the fitness land, the Z axis is the fitness axis. That is basically telling us how good or bad the controllers are at various values of X and Y. How do we find the values of X and Y? We employ genetic algorithms. I think Silavi. I think it's good. I think Y. Good night, guys.
Will you not take some questions?
Yes. No questions. I hate questions.
Yes, please, Salim. Any question? No question.
How did you pronounce that dog again? With the spots?
Dalmatian?
Dalmatian.
How do you pronounce?
Dalmatian.